their attachment to the patriotic indoctrination they had received most of their lives, America, the great land of the free, and the Arab world being, being evil, and Saddam Hussein in particular being the devil. I mean, all these beliefs and images were more holding on to them because they were fused with their individual identity was more important than the lives of children.
Yeah. See, and that's what, because to me, the idea that people hate me and they're out to get me, that they're just evil, and for some reason they're really out to get me, I find that a very unpleasant feeling.
Most people don't know how much they're suffering until they awake from the suffering.
And that's why I can't understand. But I mean, I know they're out there. You turn on your TV, for 3 seconds, and there'll be somebody on who's in that frame of mind.
Okay, we'll put it.
How? What gets them?
Okay, look. First of all, if you have an idea, if you believe that Jews always act honestly, that they rectify injustice, that Israel has always simply wanted to live in peace, but the Arab world won't let them. If you have that belief, if you believe that Jews are basically benign and they've been suffering for thousands of years because of pogroms and in particular the Nazis, if you've been brought up with that belief, then when Israel does something, and not everybody's like this, but when Israel then does something that an objective observer might say is violent, disproportionate, and was the deliberate targeting of civilians, you're not going to see it that way. You're going to say, well, Israel would never do that, therefore, the people that they killed, they had to kill, because they were collateral damage, because Hamas or Hezbollah embedded themselves in that population, and it's Hezbollah or Hamas's fault. You're going to just, every mass murderer in the history of the world, I guarantee you, has been able to justify everything he did. Okay? And so you're always going to see a world that protects and confirms your belief system. Because your belief system you take as the world. It is the world. It creates the world you see. Read my book. You'll get more. Yes.
Are you? I've read almost all of Benny Morris's books. Is he a legitimate source?
Yeah,
is he?
Okay. He is. I mean, he's nuts, but he's a legitimate source. I mean, look, the good thing about
he's Jewish, right?
Yes.
But you were sort of a revisionist like yourself that's seen the light.
I wouldn't say he's a revisionist who's seen the light. Benny Morris says that Palestinians, what does he say? He says Palestinians are, he believes that Palestinians should be live behind barbed wire fences. He calls them a pathologically insane society. He's just an honest historian. That's the amazing thing. Like I tell my twin brother, okay, my twin brother is ultra-Orthodox. He believes that all Arabs want to kill all Jews. I've told him, look, just admit that you're a bigot. You don't have to, you know what I mean? I mean, Benny Morris is willing. Benny Morris Benny Morris is willing as a historian to be honest. He doesn't have any. It doesn't affect him in any moral or ethical sense, right? He's a historian. He reports the truth, what he sees as the truth, and his work is based on all those archives. But it doesn't change him. He still has the same attitude toward Palestinians before and after the research, right? He believes that Ben-Gurion did not go far enough, that David Ben-Gurion should have cleansed the land of all the Palestinians and not left 150,000 in the country. Because he thinks that, because he has that belief that Palestinians are inherent killers.
So you think he's biased?
He is biased, but at least he's honest enough as a historian. Right? Now lately, in the last few years, he's been trying to change his conclusions, but the evidence is already out there, and you just can't do it. I don't think. Yes, sir.
So you talked about identity. How did you identify yourself before, and how do you identify yourself now?
Well, being Jewish was a very strong aspect. It was a core identity. Being a Jew was a core identity, more so than American. That's how I identified myself before this transformation. After the transformation, I realized that I was as much, as I said in the speech, I really saw and was as much Palestinian, Sudanese, Chinese, Japanese, British, American as Israeli, as much Muslim, Christian, Zoroastrian, Hindu, Buddhist as Jew. There's no, the barriers that prevent us the Hindus and Buddhists use the term veil of illusion or veil of ignorance. In Hinduism, there's a word called Maya. It's how we see the world. We don't really see the world as it is because what we're seeing is a reflection of our own inner states of consciousness. So we see the world from the viewpoint of a limited identity, of a particular, which has its own indoctrination, its own culture, its own biases, its own beliefs and images. All of that is the lens through which we see the world. And that limited identity acts, as I say in the book, as bridle reins that limit how far you can turn in any direction, how much you can see. Now you get so used to these bridle reins, you don't even know they exist, right? So you think you're seeing the whole world, but you're only seeing a part of it that is controlled and dictated by your beliefs and images. And so that's why if you have an idea, like my brother, that all Arabs are terrorists, well, whenever you see an Arab, you're not going to see the person standing in front of you. You're going to see the superimposition of your mind onto that person. You're going to superimpose your image of an Arab onto that person. And so you're going to see him as someone who maybe wants to kill you. And my brother thinks all Arabs want to kill all Jews, even though he has friends who are friends with Arabs.
So did you identify yourself as a Zionist?
No, I never thought of myself as a Zionist, but in retrospect, I realized that I approved of the Zionist ideology, although I never liked Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay, I always thought he was a liar. Always. And I never liked him, and I would have been a Labor Party. I would have been, if I lived in Israel, I would have been on the Labor Party side.
Yeah, but Zionism is not
I know,
Netanyahu.
but I would have been in favor of a
It's much
two-state.
before that.
I know, but I would have been. What I'm saying is that a large segment of the Zionist dream is taking over all of British historic Palestine, which goes to the Jordan River, right? And Sharon wanted Jordan. Ben Gurion wanted to split Jordan between Israel and Iraq. He wanted half of Lebanon. But what I'm saying is that my form of Zionism, if you want to say I identify with Zionism, was a two-state solution on the 1967 borders. That would have been fine with me.
No, and where I'm really heading is like you talk about like what needs to happen to solve the problem. Do you think it can be solved as long as so many Jews identify themselves as Zionists?
No. No, I don't think it can be solved that way. I don't, especially because the ultra-religious Jews are gaining more and more power every day. They're getting into more of them are going into the army. They're affecting, how the army operates, and because of the parliamentary structure of the Knesset, a small party can have a great deal of leverage, and the religious parties like Shas and the National Religious Party, they have strong leverage. And besides, Yisrael Betenu, which is Lieberman's party, they're not a religious party, but they're just as to the right as they want the same things that the religious Jews want. They want the whole state, pretty much. The West Bank. They want to take over the West Bank. So I don't think there can be any peaceful resolution until the United States puts its foot down.
Yeah, but it's more like if you don't want to force it by the really it's getting to the role of American Jews in solving.
Right, I think that's the key.
Is it? As long as let's leave Israelis aside for now. As long as most American Jews, I believe, I don't know the statistics.
I'm not sure if most,
but most probably. I don't know the statistics. Identify themselves as Zionists. What needs to happen to turn that around?
What can convince them that they're acting self-destructively?
So that they become a force for peace and not continuation
Probably
of what's
what
going
I
on.
think will happen is, like any form of evolution, this is an evolutionary problem. People need to wake up. People need to grow. I think, unfortunately, that it's going to take some more catastrophes before people start to wake up. Now, in my book, I mentioned a woman named Leah. I met her through my twin brother. She was a member of, she and her husband were involved with Mayor Kahani's groups in Canada and in Israel. She had her own transformation in the midst of the Second Intifada. Because rather than become more hateful after the Second Intifada started, and two daughters had friends who were killed in suicide bomb attacks. This was horrifying with her, but she saw it as, you know, tit for tat, ping pong, a ping pong game, going back and forth, and she realized getting more angry and more hateful and killing more Palestinians wasn't the answer. So that transformed her. So she's rare, but you know, she's an example. I mean, there are other examples, you know, but that was, in a way, for her, it was a catastrophe. It wasn't a major catastrophe. I mean, it wasn't like 9/11, but, you know, I mean, but it was still human life being destroyed. But it affected her the way maybe 9/11 affected a lot of people in this country. I don't really know. I know that as long as politicians value being reelected more than the lives of human beings, and especially in this country, Israel will be able to do whatever, pretty much do what it's continuing to do. Yes?
Well, to what extent will the rest of the world have had enough of that?
The rest of the world has pretty much had enough. The problem is power. Israel has the fourth most powerful army in the world. They've got 200 to 300 nuclear weapons. They got the United States standing behind them no matter what. The United States and Israel, who knows what they'll do if Iran gets the bomb. And by the way, even if Iran got the bomb, they're not stupid enough and suicidal enough to commit an act of suicide by sending a bomb to Israel when they know they'll be totally obliterated. And when they know that the bomb they send to Israel will kill as many Palestinians as Israelis. Right?
Yeah.
Israel's afraid if Iran gets the bomb, the emigration out of Israel will increase dramatically. That's the main fear. And one of the fears is, and I don't think it's as legitimate a reason, is that Iran will give the bomb to a terrorist group. That could be a legitimate fear, but the reason I don't think it is because Iran knows, like Israel knows, that that any bomb that is set off, the scientists can detect where it came from. They can tell from the way it was put together, from the trace elements and stuff, which reactor it came from. They would know it was from Iraq or North Korea or wherever. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Just to chime in about the American Jews, it's also the American Christians. There's a large
Yeah.
number of American
Jews,
Christians
right.
on the right that are just as Zionists. I go to a very progressive liberal Presbyterian church, but there's a woman in my congregation who tells me almost every Sunday, I support Israel wholeheartedly. I give them money. We need to protect them. Everybody's out to get them. And, we're a very open and affirming congregation. We welcome everybody, but she is just like
Right.
tunnel vision. So it's not just
Well, it's the
American
leaders.
Jews.
It's the leaders, really. I mean, most people follow, millions of people follow John Hagee. I mean, it's inconceivable when you watch John Hagee that people could follow him. But if Hagee had a transformation and he started saying, well, you know what, I've been wrong. Adolf Hitler wasn't a hunter sent by God, or whatever. It could really change the lives and the ideas of people because they look up to these leaders for their religious wisdom. I mean, it's just insane. Yes.
You didn't, you haven't mentioned like the colonialism and the imperialism aspect of the existence of Israel, but I just, listening to like the Zionist, the Jewish, the Christian, it feels like those are just, justifications or excuses for supporting Israel, but clearly the United States has an incredible interest
Yes.
in Israel's existence.
Wow.
That has nothing to do with religion, Judaism.
Oh, right.
Right?
Yeah.
Why, if they're so, why would we be sending billions of dollars to Israel?
Because-
If it was just for...
Because special interest groups and corporations control the politics.
But
I mean,
is it the special interest groups, or is it having a base, a military base in the Middle East?
well, that's part of it. There's oil. There's the
It's
fact.
access
There's the
to
fact
resources.
that Jews are more accepted in our society than Arabs, right? That Jews are more accepted. That Israelis, Jews are more